Turn in your songbooks to number 23. That'll be the invitation song, and keep that handy because I'm going to refer to it here in a few minutes as part of my invitation as well. Many times when we give invitations, we don't actually talk about the invitation except just maybe a little bit at the end. I title this invitation, The Great Invitation. And it comes from Luke chapter 14, verses 16 through 24. If you want to turn to that, I'll be reading it. And your Bible may have a heading that says The Parable of the Great Supper. Mine says, I've got the New International Version, the New American Standard Version. Mine says The Parable of the Dinner. But it could also be called The Parable of the Great Invitation. Because I think that's probably the most important thing here. And that's what I want to emphasize as we study it tonight. In Luke chapter 14, starting in verse 16, it says, "But he said unto him, this is Jesus speaking, a certain man was giving a big dinner," or a great supper, "and he invited many. And at the dinner hour, he sent his slave to say to those who had been invited, Come, for everything is ready now. But they all alike began to make excuses." Now, I'm not going to go over the excuses because their excuses are pretty lame. The main point here is that they used an excuse to reject coming to the supper. That's the bottom line. They rejected the invitation. And and so pick up in verse 21, it says, "And the slave came back and reported this to his master. Then the head of the household," or the master of the house, yours might say, this is the man who sent the invitations out, "became angry and said to his slave, Go out at once into the streets and lanes of the city and bring in here the poor and crippled and blind and lame." And the servant said, "Master, what you commanded has been done, and still there is room." And the master said to the slave, "Go out into the highways and along the hedges and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I tell you, none of those men who were invited shall taste my dinner." Okay, so what does this parable mean? Well, the man who invited many to his great supper, I believe, represents God. He's also called the master of the house. And so this is a parable that represents God and, of course, his kingdom. And the invitation to the Great Supper represents God's invitation into the kingdom of heaven. And the invited guest who refused to come, the first ones that were invited, represents the Jews who rejected Christ. And we talked a little bit about that tonight in our lesson. In verse 24, I think this verse is talking about those people where Jesus says, "They shall not taste my supper." And I believe this means that they would not enter into the kingdom of heaven because of their rejection of Christ. There's no way that they would enter. And it's kind of like what Ron was talking about in our study, that the Pharisees, the Jews, wanted their own means of what heaven was, or what the kingdom of heaven was. They had their own idea, and they wanted it according to their terms, not Jesus's terms. So when they rejected Jesus, they also rejected entry into the kingdom of heaven. The invitation to the maimed, the lame, and the blind, that's what the New King James Version says, I believe represents the invitation for people to enter into the kingdom starting on the day of Pentecost when Peter and the 12 began to uh, preach the kingdom of heaven. And of course, that began in Jerusalem and it spread from there. So that was the initial thrust of the kingdom of heaven. And then the invitation to the highways and hedges represents God's invitation that spread on beyond Jerusalem and on beyond uh, Judea, and represents God's invitation to the entire world, and especially to the Gentiles, who we are all Gentiles, and so we fall into that bucket, and and we see that it is God's invitation to fill His kingdom. That's God's desire, that His kingdom be full. Of course, men are going to reject that. We know that the world is full of people who reject that and want to live by their own rules, kind of like the Pharisees did as well. And that doesn't work out very well when you play by your own rules. You have to follow what God has set up and the plan that He has. And so this same invitation is for us today. And I offer it to you now. And, if you look at song number 23 that I told you to mark for the invitation, in that song, I'm just going to read the two lines of all four verses there. It says, of course, it says, all things are ready, come to the feast. And of course, this is referring back to this parable. The feast is ready. Come, for the table now is spread, ye famishing, ye weary, come, and thou shalt be richly fed. And verse 2, come, for the door is open wide. We know that the door is open wide. Jesus is waiting. A place of honor is reserved for you at the master's side. Verse 3, come while he waits to welcome thee. Delay not while this day is thine. Tomorrow may never be. And of course, we talk about that sometimes when we offer the invitation, that we're not assured of a tomorrow. We may not wake up again when we go to sleep. We may not even make it home. We don't know. We may not make it out of the building. We don't know when our last breath will be, or when Jesus will come back and that'll be the end of it. We don't know. Verse 4, leave every care and worldly strife. Come feast upon the love of God and drink everlasting life. Those last two phrases are so beautiful. Feast upon the love of God and drink everlasting life. That's what we all want. So do you want to enter the kingdom of heaven? I know that you do. And so the invitation is for you tonight. If there's anything in your life that's amiss and you would like to correct it, now is the time. The invitation is ready for you. Let's respond as we stand and sing. All things